Extreme Formula. Man, when you play a game and you're smiling ear to ear, giggling about and shouting out things like "Whoa!" and "Woohoo!" You know you're really having a good time. Even though this is still an early access version 2, what's already here is more than enough to make this purchase worth your while. You've got 39 tracks, 20 songs, 15 hoverjets with 4 variations each, 5 different difficulties, 2-player split screen that's remote play enabled, and one of the fastest racing experiences that you will ever play. And it's all being made by just one indie developer, Lake Fepard. Man, this game has changed so much since its initial demo release. Did you like that? Each track has one of those, just like GX did back then. Just like the tracks in this game, there have been many very interesting twists and turns. And it's only getting more and more interesting as it continues. At first, Lake was gonna add online multiplayer, but after fiddling with it for a while, he found he wasn't enjoying himself. So he cut us a deal, and he said, if I don't have to do this, I'll give you a few more cups to play in the game. Well, how could you say no to that? That's obviously a better deal than online.
Approved!
Especially with how the reception of this game is completely unknown. Multiplayer would only matter if it had a large player base, and right now, it only has 116 reviews. And only 6 people are playing at this moment. Which is absolutely criminal if you ask me. Now, while online isn't the focus at this time, it's not completely off the table, but it's obviously not worth pursuing at this time either. So as of right now, unless more people show interest in this game, online multiplayer pretty much won't happen. The remote play together is pretty freaking cool though. Another scrapped idea is the original character design for the pilots. Now, this is actually a good thing, because the designs looked, well, they could have looked better.
30 years old, but acts like she's 16.
And Lake, I guess, knew that as well. So he hired a guy to actually make some good looking designs. And let me tell you, they're looking mighty fine. Moving on to what's planned, well, it's very ambitious of Lake to do, but he's gonna create a story mode. Now, when you hear story mode, your mind might go to F-Zero GX, but apparently, it's gonna be a lot different than that. Story mode is gonna be an amalgamation of open world, platforming, brawling, racing, customization, fuel management, and who knows what else. Fighting in my racing game? What? Yeah, I'm right there with you. But it's not surprising if you've actually played Spark the Electric Jester 3, which is his previous game that he made before this one. And it's like Sonic meets Devil May Cry. The man loves his fighting in his games.
Well, here I am again, now experimenting with adding as many enemies as possible as a sort of a stress test to see how the engine handles.
Oh, speaking of which, make sure to play it on an SSD, not an HDD. You'll get better performance.
So they can go around and find the player. But thankfully, in my computer at least, I have this many enemies running at about 70 or so FPS, and it's actually I'm surprised at the performance. And yes, this is still for the story mode of a racing game. Yes, very much so.
Suffice to say, I'm very intrigued as to what this amalgamation is going to look like in the end. Now, for what's actually here, there's a lot. So let's dive into arcade mode. In arcade mode, you have tournament, single race, and time attack. In time attack, you try to outdo your best time. I'm also hoping that Lake adds a ghost to race against in time attack mode. In single race, you pick whatever track you want to race on. The difficulty definitely needs to stay on the difficulty that you set it as, though, instead of being reverted back to normal each time. That is very annoying. In tournament mode, you race a handful of tracks in a cup. Tournament mode also has the Proving Grounds, which is a place to both learn and practice moves and skills for the real races. There's also moons and planets that you don't race on, that's flavor text, to add to the lore. Back to the Proving Grounds, though, there's a few things that need to be tweaked in the Proving Grounds, like these transparent gray walls. You can't see them, and you don't know which way to turn. It's quite frustrating, and it's only seen in the Proving Grounds. A really easy fix for this would be to make black and yellow arrows in the direction that you need to go. I also think it would be a good idea to add a window that pops up if people haven't completed all the training yet, because there are some things that you can miss, like learning how to drift, and you can just go off and race. So that should probably be fixed. I mean, let the player leave if they want, but at least let them know. And lastly, you don't get to actually race on this track. Like, what? This is an amazing track, and it feels so wrong that you can't unlock this full thing as a reward. I thought since I put all that effort into getting all the gold cups on every challenge, that I would be rewarded the ability to access the whole Proving Grounds track. But that didn't happen, and that is extremely disappointing, especially with how good this track is. Now, with that said, this is Early Access version 2, and maybe he's already thought of this. In story mode, we have the picture of the Proving Grounds, so maybe we'll get the full track there. But if it's not, I will be completely disappointed with the wasted potential and extra reward that Lake could have given the player for getting all golds on every challenge. Anyway, once you're done with the Proving Grounds, you then get to the actual races, and you have 8 different cups to choose from. So, choose your cup, choose your difficulty, and then pick your hoverjet, and boom bada bing, you're racing. And by racing on different cups and different difficulties, you unlock different hoverjets to race with, as well as more cups and tracks to race on. Personally, I believe that some of these unlocks should make you complete them with certain hoverjets, along with different difficulties and cups. But that's just me. But then again, it's probably a moot point when you can do things like this on certain tracks. Now let's take a look at the difficulties. You have normal. All right, let me tell you right now. Normal isn't even normal right now. It's baby mode. Like, if you're losing on normal, you should genuinely feel bad about yourself. Damn it. I'm so fucking ass. That's how easy it is. It definitely needs some tweaking. With that said, Intense is actually really well balanced, and you'll feel really good when you complete a cup in Extreme.
Yeah, baby!
You'll feel like you truly accomplished a hard task. That is, until Beyond comes along and says, Beyond is completely unfair. No, really. It's actually unfair. That's what it used to be called before it was called Beyond. In Beyond, the ships are faster than you, meaning that you have to play your very best. Is what I would say if it weren't for the fact that right now you can still play pretty sloppy and still win. Right now, the damage done to your ship when hitting walls or other ships hitting you doesn't scale with the difficulty, so you don't have to master the game in order to complete it. And I think that's a shame. Like, for real, you should have to defend yourself from ships coming behind you on Beyond. I'm really hoping that Lake increases the amount of damage to your ship dependent on the difficulty, because that Beyond should feel like you freaking earned it in every way possible. Beyond that, though, we'll get to that in a second. I'll tell you right now, Beyond is a really great challenge, and it will feel really rewarding to unlock those special ships when you do. That is, unless you're using the Red Kestrel to do so. This hoverjet is way too OP, and I have no idea why it's so easy to unlock. This should be the last hoverjet that you're able to unlock in this game. This hoverjet not only trivializes the Beyond difficulty, but almost every single track as well. Lake, seriously, lock this hoverjet behind the final challenge. I'm telling you. Like I said, this game is still in early access, and it needs a bit of tweaking. But, like I said as well, the game itself is amazing, and it will blow you away with what it has right now. Now the last difficulty, the one that's just dots, that's just a bonus. There's nothing to unlock while playing that difficulty. It's just for funsies. It's basically Beyond, but faster. Think of something along the lines of Mario Kart 200cc, except there's nothing to unlock for it. Now personally for me, I think that Lake really missed a great opportunity to call the last difficulty either Plus Ultra or further Beyond.
Go beyond! Plus!
But what we got is special. No, I mean, it's just literally called special. That's what Lake named it. That's it. Totally missed opportunity, Lake. Further Beyond, come on, my guy. Beyond that, the game is a rush. It's the fastest racing game you're ever gonna play. Well, technically, there are faster racing games out there. But I don't think that any of them capture the same feeling of speed quite like Extreme Formula. Now, I know Extreme Formula looks a lot like F-Zero GX, and you're probably thinking that too. And yeah, it definitely shares some similarities with it, but I can tell you right now that Extreme Formula is not F-Zero GX, and it's so much better for it. Back in November 2023, Hold on, this is a really sick solo. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah. Back in November 2023, I made a video talking about this game, and I have to admit, I was wrong about a few things. Like the snowflake symbol, for instance. That's actually your symbol for your engine. Who knew? It looks like he also changed the symbol, so that makes me feel a little better. But another thing I got wrong in that video was saying that F-Zero can retire. It's over. It's over. F-Zero can now retire. I finally got what I've always wanted.
It only took
20
years.
Now the 20 years thing wasn't wrong, but it being F-Zero GX was. The more I play XF, the more I realize it's not F-Zero GX. And because of that, it can do some things better than that game could. For instance, I won't be hearing this all the time. Look, I love F-Zero GX, but there is a lot of jank under that hood. And you'll know what I mean if you've ever seen an F-Zero GX speedrunning video before. It takes a lot of talent to do this, but it still shows you how jank the physics system is in this game. And people wonder why there was no online multiplayer. But here's what an actual lap looks like for reference. 27 seconds is what it took me for one lap. With that said, if you're looking for F-Zero-like games, go play Aero GPX. It's the closest thing you're gonna get to a mixture of F-Zero X and GX. And it's also got the jank that was purposely put in the game. Though there's certain similarities between both XF and GX, there's also some unique gimmicks and mechanics that separate them from each other. For instance, all the stats on the screen. Most of those are just flavor text. All you really need to focus on is the hull, the fuel, the boost, what lap you're on, and what place you're in. That's all that really matters on the screen. I suppose if you care to have an example of one of the stats being important but not really, just look at the track Mariner's Tribute and look at the gravity stat. You'll see that gravity here is pretty weak. And when you're going over that waterfall, well, now it makes sense why you're having so much airtime. But you have things like the fuel gauge, the health not being connected to the boost, being able to boost on the first lap, as well as boost chaining being the core component of this game. Being able to use your O2 boost in two different ways, either tapping the button or holding it down. This is a very important feature in the game. There are some tracks that are basically just top speed tracks, where the point of the track is to hit every speed ramp and O2 pad and just keep boosting, no matter what. If you had to continually press the boost button, your thumb would get so fatigued, and it would feel tedious. So having those two options is a game changer, quite literally. So not only do you have more depth, but you also have quality of life. You also have a secondary boost called the overdrive that depletes your fuel gauge over time while in use. To use it, you just hold the Y button for a little bit of time and then it activates. When you want to turn it off, you just tap the Y button again and it shuts off. I find the overdrive useful in places that don't have the speed ramps or boost pads, like this area right here in the glacial track. You can also just wait to use it at the very end of the race too. That's another good strategy. With that said, the overdrive definitely has potential, but I don't think it's reached that potential yet. Personally, I believe that the overdrive should do more hull damage to your ship while also eating away at your fuel. This would make that mechanic a lot more risk versus reward, and it would add a lot more strategy to it as well. If you don't have enough fuel,
We need more gas!
or health on the last lap, how are you gonna use it? Well, simply, you don't. What happens when you try and abuse it early in the race? Well, now you have very little fuel and health, and now you're going to need to be extremely careful not to hit any obstacles or walls for the whole rest of the race. This is the risk and reward that I'm talking about, and I believe this would balance the overdrive. Moving on though, there's no slippery controls or grip loss in XF, and I absolutely love that because I was not a fan of the grip loss that was in F-Zero GX. With that said, I do think that Lake should add 1 or 2 slippery controlling ships to his game, because right now, there are 0 slippery controlled ships, and it kinda doesn't make sense to have a stability stat if all the hoverjets have the same stability. XF and GX both have drifting. However, the drifting between the two is very different. To drift in F-Zero GX, you gotta hold down the strafe in the opposite direction that you want to turn, then you have to tap the strafe that you're turning into. I like to double tap it as it's more reliable, and boom, you're now drifting. With XF, all you gotta do is just strafe in the opposite direction that you're turning, and boom, you're drifting. The difference between the two is that XF is a little bit more simplistic, but it rewards you O2 for doing deep drifts. Here's a fun little tidbit. It's debated whether or not the drift in F-Zero GX is actually intentional or not. In the manual, it only shows the player how to drift by holding down both strafe triggers at once while turning. And here, it says that if top speed is chosen over acceleration, you lose the ability to quickly drift in turns. Well, clearly, I'm pulling this off quite quickly, so it does seem to be an accident of sorts. Whether it's intentional or not, it's definitely one of the reasons why F-Zero GX is as good as it is and why it gets so much praise even today. Personally, I'm thankful for it because it bypasses me having to use acceleration and deal with more severe slippery controls and grip loss. And you know how I feel about slippery controls and grip loss. Anyway, back to XF. Where were we? Drifting. Right. Drifting. Easy peasy. But let me tell you, mastering the drift and its timing is a whole other thing. This person is definitely a very skilled player. If you know anything about how the game controls and how that ship handles, this is very impressive. Speaking of ships, all 15 ships feel different from one another. Well, not exactly all the ships, but a good amount. And there's enough difference between the identical ones for you to notice something is slightly different about it. For instance, some ships make you lay off the gas or even brake to turn at all. And the reason for that is because you turn harder when you're not accelerating. And some of the tracks themselves are gonna force you to brake no matter what vehicle you have. Something that F-Zero didn't ever make you do. Be it the ship that you're using or the hairpin turns on the track, you're gonna slow down. And that's actually the fun part because there's so much variety to this game. You're gonna be accelerating to ridiculous speeds and then have to slow down, brake, drift, strafe, hard turn, and then accelerate and boost off again. It is exhilarating. Who would have thought that braking in a high-speed game would be half the fun?
Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
Back to the variety of ships though. The Forgery and the Garcian GT500 are practically the same ship on paper, but the Garcian GT500 is definitely the better ship. What's the difference? You know how I said that all the ships have the same stability stat? Well, the Forgery sure as hell doesn't feel like it. It's the most slippery ship in the game. Just for context, the reason the Forgery is so slippery here is because it's on water, and the Forgery has no off-road capability whatsoever. So basically, this is a good example of what a low stability stat would look like in this game. No, but the real thing I wanted to point out is that the Forgery feels like it has too much turning capability, making the controls feel really sensitive, while the Garcian GT500 feels just right. You might not find all the ships to be quite as unique as I do, but you'll definitely notice with each one you unlock, they all do play a little bit differently than the other ones. And that is something that I absolutely appreciate about XF. F-Zero GX had 40 ships to choose from, but it mostly felt like an illusion of choice, all leading to the same damned grip loss. Another difference between the two is a little bit more controversial, but I like it. And that's that you can't boost while you're in outer space. In fact, Euro 2 depletes while out there. You have to solely rely on your precision skills to not hit any walls, as well as use the boost ramps to keep your speed up. It's a nice little twist to the game. Another difference between the two games is surprisingly another boost option. That's what I like to call the Deacceleration Burst Boost, or the Whisper Boost. Now, I already showed it here without any explanation, but I think it's time to explain it. Literally, all you have to do to pull off a Whisper Boost is just boost without accelerating. That's it. Super simple, yet very useful. There are some tracks like Krakenaria Y that have some pretty crazy turns in them, and by doing a Whisper Boost, you're able to not only keep up your speed, but also make those hard turns while doing so. Because remember what I said, you turn harder when you lay off the gas in this game. I asked Lake about this mechanic, and he said that it's actually the intended behavior of the boost, and that it's all intentional. This is yet another great example of a mechanic that adds more complexity, variety, and fun to the game. And lastly, one of my favorite differences is the sonic boom. This is such a cool audio and visual gimmick. Though it's not scientifically correct, as a sonic boom happens around 767 miles per hour, it is such a spectacle to behold, and it makes you feel like you're going that much faster. It doesn't matter if it's scientifically correct or not, it's awesome. And speaking of awesome, this is by far one of my favorite OSTs of all time. These 6 musicians are masterclass, and they deserve every bit of praise. This OST is a mixture of rock, techno, piano, drum and bass, breakcore, a hint of dissonance, with a sprinkle of 2000s. This game has some of the sickest breakdowns I have ever heard. This song at certain times actually gets me quite emotional. I think about the game not ever reaching the audience it deserves, these musicians not being heard. But also, it's just a really beautiful song. Sometimes you'll hear the whining and wailing of a guitar. And at other times, it'll break down into one of the most beautiful, high-energy driven symphonies you've heard. Seriously, how can something go so hard, but yet be so soft at the same time? That's what she said. And then you have songs that sound like they were ripped right out of a rave party. This song goes so fucking hard, and if you're not feeling aggressive after hearing this, you might very well be dead inside. But wait, in the final lap, it becomes this. Seriously, if you're not jumping up and down, pumping your fist, and moving and grooving, you're dead. I don't believe that you're alive. Another song that has immense energy to it is Kaise Circuit, one of my favorite tracks on this OST. It starts off with a solid beat to follow, and ends up like this. When I hear the Proving Grounds music, I can't help but think about Christopher Walken dancing like this while listening to this. Good stuff. There's also some really interesting experimental sounds in this OST as well. For instance, Krakenaria. It sounds like the musician heard one of those EV cars that have that weird angelic sound to them, and was like, yeah, I could turn that into a bop. And of course, the final lap always goes hard. And the last one I'll give an example to is Frigid Metropolis. This is some crazy funk. It's like if SSX and Jet Set Radio got together and had a child. This is not only where you're gonna get the most 2000s sound out of this OST, but also the most dissonance as well. So yeah, the album slaps. Speaking of slapping, yeah. It seems that the developer decided to slap a few decals and logos to the Hoverjets. And not just the Hoverjets, the whole entire game. I like it. I think it sells the believability of this world and makes you feel like you're actually participating in a big, important race. Oh, and there's a random QR code. I wonder what that's about. But anyway, back to the ships. The logos and the decals bring a lot of character to the ships. Check it out. This is what the ship used to look like before they had the logos, and this is what they look like now. I'm honestly surprised how much something as little as a logo on a ship drastically changes the cool factor of said ship. Like, look at these! They're so freaking sick! I think the No and the KKX are probably my favorite logos thus far. Oh, and look at that. Lake just dropped a video showing how the customization is going to work in this game. Apparently you're going to be able to slap a shit ton of logos on your ship if you so desire. It also looks like they're going to have a leveling system involved. Interesting. And now, we've hit the finale of this video. All that's left to talk about is how some of these things that are in the game now almost didn't happen. Here's how things went down during the progress of this game. Lake would get feedback and criticism from the players, and then immediately he'd turn around and say, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. There are so many times that my heart sank because I didn't think that this game was going to reach its true potential. But Color Me surprised Pikachu because all of a sudden he'd change his mind and then do the thing he said he wouldn't do. It was a really weird experience. You see these 5 ships? Yeah, believe it or not, they weren't originally going to be playable and lockable ships. I can't believe that I almost didn't get my Garcian GT500. That would have sucked. You see this boost option that I told you about with the tapping and the holding? Yeah, that originally wasn't in the game. You could only burst boost and that was it. Thank God Lake listened and added that additional boost option, because if he hadn't, the game would have suffered so badly for it. You see these 39 tracks? Yeah, Lake said that 39 tracks was enough for this game. And to be fair, 39 tracks is a lot, especially for a single indie developer. But I always felt like it needed just a few more tracks. The difficulty and complexity of these tracks were starting to ramp up right at the end, but then it just stopped and it never actually reached that next level that I was looking for. I wanted to see all the ideas that this game was playing with brought to its full potential. Well, as you know, Lake said, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And that was the end of it. Until he didn't want to make online multiplayer. Then he was more than happy to create a few more cups for us. And that's fantastic. But I'm hoping that a handful of those new tracks reach that level that I was looking for. That grandiose magnum opus. Originally, Lake said he didn't want attacking other ships to be the main focus of the game. But then he added the omnidirectional swipe attack, thus giving us another way to easily attack ships. With that said, I despise that both the spin attack and the omnidirectional swipe attack are on the same button. At one point, there was a conversation about how cool it could be if the boost functioned like Burnout, and it just went down continuously so long as you held down the boost button. Well, Lake said in the testing phase that he actually made that option available, but the controlled testing unit liked the burst boost more. So I asked, well, why not bring it back? And he said, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Only to later on give us the awesome boost mechanic that is the overdrive. Over and over and over and over again, Lake would say, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. And then he'd freaking do it. Suffice to say, it was pleasantly surprising, but very confusing. I'm just glad he changed his mind in the end and decided to make the best damn game that he could. With where this game's at right now, it's not only a hidden gem, but also one of my dream games made come true. Not many people get to say that, but I do. I feel very lucky. I'm really hoping that this gem of a game isn't hidden much longer, because it certainly deserves to be seen, heard, played, and loved. It is by far one of the best racing games I've ever played, and it's also the fastest feeling racing game I've experienced to date. I guess with all that said, the only thing I have left to say is, what are you waiting for? Go buy the damn game already. And of course, thanks for watching. Speaking of slapping, it seems like the developer decided to slap a few decals. Fuck, did I say decals?